What's up, ducks and duckettes, and happy Easter. It is I, Trevor Thompson, the self-appointed Looney Tunes critic, and we are watching Daffy Duck's Easter special, aka Daffy Duck's Easter Egg-Citement. And this is kind of the reason I'm doing this as a commentary. Let me just start off by saying that is because Easter, look at that shit lettering. I'm with you, Daffy.
Graffiti and another thing.
I'm with you, Daffy. That does look like utter shit. It really is. The Easter's a big deal for us here at Planet Looney Tunes Critic. Because I started doing these commentaries on Easter 2016 with Easter Yeggs. So I also don't want to do a review about this thing because, quite frankly, I think all that can be said and covered in this can be said and covered in a commentary. And we're not going to go it alone. No, we're going to go. Usually I can't really talk too authoritatively about the Friz Freleng stuff. Because, let's be frank, I hate most of it. So I'm going to bring on somebody whose opinion I very much value and who I trust, and somebody who you guys should all know if you like this kind of stuff. An old website from the past called GoldenAgeCartoons.com, which is now a very active Facebook page, Golden Age Cartoons, curator, and all-around great guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Hunters. Hey, Matt.
Hey.
Oh, wow, that was a loud one. How are you, man?
I'm all right, man.
Where are you? You're in Texas?
Fort Worth, yes, sir.
All right. Well, today we're celebrating Easter, and we're going to watch this wonderful special. Are you a fan of this stuff?
Here's the deal with this special. I didn't see it this way with these introductions and interstitials and stuff. I saw the shorts individually. They aired on Nickelodeon back when I was a kid, and I knew there was something kind of different about them, but I didn't know what it was. They just the animation quality wasn't as good.
Yeah.
The music wasn't as good. They were made for TV, and the idea was.
Well, that's the thing is that when we did, I did the review of Bugs Bunny's Looney Christmas Tales. This was made the same year with the exact same intention in mind that it would be a special. But as you're about to say, it's really just 3 segments that are going to later be used as shorts for the TV syndication, and much of the same crew was used for this thing. In fact, when I saw this thing, this whole segment with Foghorn, I thought was going to be the segment, and I remember being a little bit disappointed because back then I was really just discovering Foghorn for the first time.
Yeah, well, this was made a couple of years after Robert McKimson had passed away.
Yeah,
and you can tell that these animators maybe aren't all that familiar with Foghorn, and he's not really drawn very well.
No.
But what's interesting is one of the people involved with this particular short, and really the whole special, was Art Davis, who had his own directorial unit really briefly in the 40s, but he went back to being an animator for Friz Freleng. And there is some animation in this particular short, which is later titled The Yoke's on You, that is actually really good, and I think Davis may have been the one who did it. Watch for a scene where Daffy and Sylvester are fighting over the egg, like between a fence, and he goes, I'm filthy and vulgarly rich, and then Sylvester, beats him with the board, and he's like, now you're just filthy and vulgar. But you watch the animation on that, it's freaking beautiful. It doesn't match the rest of the special at all. So.
And that's Art Davis's animation?
I think so, or maybe his layouts by another animator, but it's well done. And this whole feuding over an egg thing is also, I think, loosely based on a short that Davis did in 1962. It was called Quackadile Tears, because Friz was busy doing the Bugs Bunny show.
Yeah.
And so they had, he had Holly Pratt and also Davis. Direct a couple cartoons in his place, and Davis still had it, even though he hadn't directed in a long time. But it's basically Daffy and an alligator fighting over an egg that they each think is theirs. And
that cartoon is definitely a funnier take on that that whole thing. By the way, you're mentioning Art Davis. Did you know? I just found this out today. Did you know that he is the brother of Terry Toon's story person and director Manny Davis?
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I had no idea that many of us love Art Davis. All of us more cartoony type fans, because he had kind of a I don't want to say a Clampett style, but like more of the Clampett, Tashlin, Avery aesthetic.
Well, he inherited a lot of those animators. See, that was the thing, is Clampett and Tashlin left in the same period, like right after the war. And this is the part I was talking about.
Yeah, it does look very different. In fact, I remember thinking that exact thing. I was like, this looks like somebody with an actual style is working at it.
I just love this bit. See, look at that. Oh.
Yeah. See, that does stick out in terms of style. In terms of quality, just it looks like they just kind of let him go straight ahead. Yeah. See, that almost looks like that little shot there's almost like 30s Daffy, Tashlin kind of style. By the way, if while we're here and talking about stuff that is actually like the old days, I took the time to repitch Daffy and Sylvester once again the way I did for the 5 non-WB Mel Blanc Looney Tunes performances video from Scarlet Pumpernickel. And it's amazing because once you get original Mel talking to Sylvester or original Daffy talking to, so vice versa, and you get the pitch to be the same as to what it was recorded, even then, it's not the same voice.
No, it's not. And the way Blank, I think, explained it at one point was Sylvester is Gentile and Daffy is Jewish.
Yeah.
That was how he kind of, because Daffy will use like certain Yiddish kind of things sometimes, and he's kind of, that was how Blank kind of differentiated it. But
Greg
Ford
Ford told me, he goes that he said that to him, but he gave him an example, and he said, all right, here's Sylvester saying the line, "Hello, breakfast." And he goes, "Here's Daffy. Hello, breakfast."
Yeah. They're different.
They're different. They're very, and that's definitely a Jewish take, if I may say so.
Yeah, and then see, there's the good animator again.
Yeah, there's more Art Davis.
Yeah,
and it's so weird. It doesn't fit with like the, quite frankly, crappy model sheets that must have been used for this, because it does whether or not I like it is another story, but it's definitely of its own style, and they're kind of letting him go on his own.
Yeah, but I mean, look at this scene. I mean, the characters look like they did at least in the 60s at least. I mean, they're not back to the golden age really, but they're pretty competent. Like that's like I said, that looks like an Art Davis style. If he didn't animate this, he definitely laid it out. And and then we kind of switch back and forth to that, and then we have some kind of lesser quality animation. So also, one of the names that you'll see on here there you go. It's more quality character animation there with that facial shot. Yeah. But you see the name Dave DeTeege on here. Yes.
He was, along with Art Vitello, one of the last guys to be around at the studio, the original studio. But he was one of Friz's favorite story people. Whenever anyone would question what Dave DeTeege wrote, Friz would apparently say the effect of, he knows story. He worked at Disney. that was his comeback for whatever anyone said. So Friz apparently did play favorites, and he also gave him a director's position.
Well, he said the same thing about John Dunn, who we'll talk about, because he wrote the last cartoon on this special, but he said the same thing about him. So, and he did play favorites, and Friz was apparently kind of difficult to deal with. And there's one name on here from Patty Freleng for years that's absent from this, and that's Holly Pratt, who was his layout guy forever. And I asked Jerry Beck about this yesterday, And he said that another guy who was not on this special, Art Leonardi, had a story about how Friz was going to have Holly Pratt direct the titles for Revenge of the Pink Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some kind of an argument, and he remembers Holly Pratt walking out of Freleng's office, handing Leonardi the pencil and saying, "You do it," and going home. And that was like 1976, we think, and that may have been when he left DePatie Freleng. He retired. He didn't do anything else after that.
Oh, for some reason, I thought he retired in 1970.
No, it was a little later than that. We think it was like 1976. The last credit I can find for him is a Dogfather cartoon in 74. Now, this cartoon here, I want to point out, this is Friz directing this, and this is him and his infinite use of recycled gags and plots.
Yeah.
This is the titular. It was the second Speedy, but it was the kind of first definitive Speedy from 1955, just called Speedy Gonzales, and in that one it was
Cheese.
It was Cheese and Sylvester, and in this one it's Chocolate and Daffy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah, that's what I mean to say, ladies and gentlemen. There's a number of really hardcore Friz lovers out there who, for some reason, every time I say something borderline disparaging about Friz, they always go, "Why do you hate Friz?" And one of the things that I apparently say all the time is that Friz repeats himself, and it's like, well, give me some examples. Well, you're looking at an example right now. This is one of Friz, quite rightly in a weird way. No one really could have foreseen how long these cartoons were going to last in his day. So, whether or not you think that it's a result of him not being creative or just him being lazy, the reality is he didn't have any real reason to be super original.
And Friz was a perfectionist, and if he thought something could be done better, he would do it better in another cartoon, and nobody cared because these cartoons weren't supposed to be seen. Well, this one was, because this was in the TV era, but like back in the 40s and 50s, they just thought, oh, the shelf life of this cartoon is a couple weeks when it runs in theaters.
Yeah. And
they could reissue them every now and then, but most people didn't see them in 6 cartoon marathons.
That's what Chuck said, was that he said that they thought at the very best, completely optimistic, the year they made the cartoon. Completely optimistic, maybe the cartoon had a life of 6 years. 6, maybe 7 years before it was on a shelf forever and would probably be, melted down so that they can save, save space
and value
and
them at all.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's ouch. Okay, that's funny. And, here's the reason that they're doing Daffy and Speedy after they did so many of them in the 60s. It's because this aired on NBC, and they briefly had a Looney Tunes package that was mostly Daffy and Speedy cartoons. In fact, it was called the Daffy Speedy Show. And this was kind of a tie-in to that, because most of the cartoons on there were Speedy and or Daffy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they probably would have had McKimson do this one if he were still living, because... Yeah. He did a lot of those, and this is interesting because Warner Brothers in 1980 did not have their own studio. These are, DePatie Freleng, and then they did some with Chuck Jones Studio as well. But
Chuck Jones Enterprises
and Friz both had their own studios, and Warner Brothers didn't. They tried something. DePatie Freleng popped up, and Warner Brothers had them make the cartoons, and then they had a budget dispute, I guess. And in 1967, I think it was, they decided, okay, we're going to do our own studio again. And they hired McKimson away from DePatie Freleng to helm it. And they got Alex Lovey, who is a Lance and Hanna-Barbera veteran. And this was in what they called the WB 7 Arts era. And Lovey did a couple of Daffy Speedies, and they are awful. Like, if you don't like McKimson's, you really don't like those Alex Lovey ones, man.
Yeah, they're really the only thing you can get from them is that, it's got McKimson's, really good draftsmanship skills, but, because he lays out all the poses himself, but...
Yeah,
that's about it.
It gets a lot of hate, but some of the one-shot and original characters they tried to come up with are just widely reviled by fans. But like Cool Cat and Merlin the Mouse, and I like Bunny and Claude myself. I think those two cartoons are funny, but that whole era just was not a success. And so Warner Brothers decided, you know what, we're going to stop making cartoons again, and if we ever do, we're going to just outsource them to the guys who made them originally. So that's why they used a Patty Freleng.
You know what? Speaking of that, and also of Friz repeating gags, isn't the end of this gag a little bit, I forget which cartoon it is, but it's a Daffy Speedy cartoon where at the end of it, Daffy's in a good mood because he's like covered in chocolate or something?
Well, there's one where, what's it called? Fiesta Fiasco.
Yeah.
Where he invents this rain cloud making machine, and he tries to literally rain on Speedy's parade or a party, literally. And then he realizes that it's the mice throwing a party for him, and so he cries and he says, "This is the happiest day of my life," or something like that. I saw it all the time on Nickelodeon, so I don't maybe hate it as much as some people do, but it's a bad cartoon.
Yeah, it's not.
I believe it was one of Lovey's, but yeah, that was really the tail end, like 1968 or something. Now this stuff here, by the way,
is all duck-amuck.
It's all duck-amuck, but duck-amuck like a poor man's duck-amuck.
Yeah, like a welfare man's duck-amuck.
Yeah, but this little bit here, and
what's the bee from? The bee has a completely different design.
Well, it's the most Patty Freleng looking bee ever, and I think it was, I don't know who the animator was, but there was a series of PSAs that Patty Freleng did in the late 70s that was called Time for Timer. And he looks a lot like that character.
That's a cool design.
I hanker for a hunk of cheese. You can look that up. But that looks like one of those. Now this cartoon, this is Daffy Flies North, and it is a ripoff, essentially, or at least the last half of it is, of a cartoon called Pinto Pink from 1967. It was Holly Pratt's cartoon, and then the story writer, John Dunn. And Pink Panther tries to get a horse to wear a saddle and ride him.
That's right, yeah.
And it's almost the exact same design for the horse.
The horse is, I've said this before, I don't remember where, but the horse, and I am admittedly ignorant on all things Pink Panther, but the horse is hands down the funniest thing about this cartoon.
Yeah, I agree.
The horse, simply because the horse is a fucking asshole, and he's just an ass, and the drawings of him laughing at Daffy are so funny. You just... It's
like,
yeah, he's just, that's like GIF worthy.
In a way that only Mel Blanc could do, that horse laugh.
That's his radio horse whinny.
Yeah, that's a redo of a gag from a cartoon called Wisecrackers, where he's, Elmer Fudd shoots him out of the sky and he lands on it. He's like, perfect 3-point landing.
Yeah. Also, one of the old guys that worked on this was either I never know if it's Gary or Jerry Chiniquy.
Yeah, Jerry Chiniquy. Yeah,
Chiniquy. Yeah, he was Friz's. He did a lot of the dance animation that you see in this, along with Virgil Ross.
Yeah, that was like Chiniquy. I believe
he goes all the way back to the 30s.
He does, and he did that T for Two dance scene in what is it, Showbiz Bugs?
Yeah,
that was him. I believe the Yosemite Sam dancing down a mine shaft was him, and what is it, Bugs Bunny Rides Again?
Yeah, right. And you know what's really weird about the dance stuff is that many people have said that Chiniquy is or Chiniquy, however you say it, he was the spitting image of Gene Kelly.
Really?
Yeah, he was very dapper in real life, much like McKimson.
These backgrounds here, by the way, are also by a veteran. It was Richard H. Thomas. He went by Dick Thomas informally. And he did a lot of the background paintings in the 40s and 50s for McKimson. He was a McKimson background artist.
Although, we should point out, though, that he got a little more credit than he should have, because for the backgrounds... there was Jesse Santos and Martin Strudler. They got credited for layout for this whole special, but Jesse worked at Filmation in the 70s and Hanna-Barbera in the 80s, and he was like a production layout guy from around that time. He actually had comic book background, so it was one of those things where he was never really used to his full potential. So. Again, I'm distracted, but there it is.
That's great.
Horse is like, "F you, duck. You're not getting on here."
Another.
What's the cartoon that this is from? The horse originally?
A Pinto Pink, and you can look it up. It's on the new Kino Lorber sets of the Blu-rays of the Pink Panther, which, by the way, are great. You can get them.
Greg Ford, worked on that. He was telling me he was working on that when I was interviewing him for the Quackbusters review. That's actually why it took so long to do, is because I was waiting on getting a time to interview him. He was really busy with that at the time.
Another guy we need to mention real quick is Tony Benedict worked on this, and he was a Hanna-Barbera veteran.
He started at Disney in the 50s, and he was kind of a animation nuts and bolts kind of guy, because he would do everything. He would do in betweening, clean up, but he eventually was like would you call him more like a gag man?
Yeah, he wrote for like gags for the Flintstones and the Jetsons. In fact, I believe Astro was his character. He came up with that idea, like if the Jetsons a talking dog. Yeah, that was Tony Benedict. And he worked on, he was with Hanna-Barbera when they were good, like when they were doing Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear and Flintstones, and, before they became just a complete assembly line factory.
When Maltese was working there and a couple of the other story guys.
Yeah, well, Maltese and Warren Foster, too, worked there. Like, they stole all of Warner Brothers' talent.
Yeah, the story quality did go over to, from left Warner Brothers in the early 60s and went over to Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
And completely benefited too, because the animation slowly got worse, but at Warner's, but the quality of the stories and the gags and everything at over to Hanna-Barbera in that time
got better.
Yeah, exactly. And if nothing else, just stayed good, for, like you say, the first couple of years.
That's a pretty good bit of animation there. You don't see that in the TV budget very often.
There it is again. I love floating eyebrows. I'm always a fan of floating eyebrows on a character. But you and I were talking today about Holly Pratt, and I want to kind of talk a little bit about that now, because I've been really struggling to figure out what Friz's personal drawing style was, because I'd heard over the years that he was kind of stuck in the rubber hose 30s style.
Yeah, he was a fair enough draftsman. Like, he was really expressive, but he was really simplistic. And you see some of those cells he did in the 80s that were not done by a ghost artist. You could tell he could draw the characters fairly well, but they were not the quality of Holly Pratt.
And I had heard that they were Holly Pratt, and then looking at them again, it's like, well, if you took a freeze frame and weren't the best draftsman, and you approximate, there it is. That's probably Art Davis again. Look at that.
Yeah,
that's got to be Art Davis. I guarantee you, that's the style.
That was the last cartoon on the thing, but yeah, and this whole Duck Amuck ripoff thing, it wasn't as good as the original Duck Amuck. But like I say, I never saw it until it came on DVD. They never aired it again, at least in my lifetime, until they started putting them on DVD. So
there wasn't. I will say this: there wasn't enough. I always said this about Duck Amuck. There's not enough nudity. Not enough full frontal nudity, so fine. I'll give you that, DFE.
There you go. That's all, folks.
That is, we'll leave on that tasteless, awful note there. But Matt, thanks for sitting in with us, man. And
you're welcome. Anytime.
And happy Easter to you.
Well, same to you.
And we'll see you guys around. That's all, folks.
All right.
Thank you.